The moment that changed everything to rain came without warning. Soft at first, like a whisper on stone, then suddenly loud and wild, falling in sheets that blurred vision and soaked through clothes. Hundreds of people had gathered at the open field outside the Tech Innovation Summit in Delhi, where leaders from all over the world had come to speak. The main event was yet to begin, but everyone waited eagerly under umbrellas and plastic sheets. Eyes fixed on the stage, Sundar Pichai stood at the edge of the platform, hands folded, eyes watching the sky. He was dressed simply, a white shirt, now damp around the collar, trousers dark from the rain. He didn't complain, he didn't move. Behind him, the screens glowed softly, preparing to show the world what would be an unforgettable day. That's when the Prime Minister arrived, Modi. And G stepped out of the black car, smiling at the crowd. The cheers rose instantly. Phones went up in the air. But someone gasped loudly. Then another. Soon everyone noticed that Modi Ji had forgotten his umbrella. He walked calmly, head high, but the rain was merciless. Drops ran down his face, soaking. His kurta sticking the fabric to his skin. Security moved to shield him, but they were too far behind. In the confusion, something happened that no one expected. Sundar stepped down from the stage, without a word. He walked through the rain, through the stunned silence, holding his own umbrella. The cameras turned to him. Hundreds of eyes followed. He reached Modi Ji just as another wave of rain crashed down, and he lifted his umbrella over the Prime Minister's head. He said nothing. Modi Ji looked at him. Surprised? Not just because Sundar had offered shelter, but because of the way he did it. Silent, humble, with deep respect, like he had not done anything special. A simple gesture. But in that moment, the entire field felt something shift. The crowd broke into quiet applause. The photo was captured. A single frame that would be shared across the internet in minutes. But this story, this day, was not about a photo. It was about what happened next after the speeches, after the applause, after the event ended. A strange thing happened. Sundar was nowhere to be found. He disappeared. The man who had just saved a leader from the storm had vanished into it. At night, journalists knocked on hotel doors, searched the airport, checked every known location he might have visited. But he was gone. And just like that. The man behind the biggest moment of the day had become the biggest mystery of the week. No one knew where he was or why he had left so suddenly, but one boy knew. And he held a letter in his hand. A letter Sundar had given him with tears in his eyes. A letter that would change everything. Asterisk the boy. With the letter, rain had stopped by morning. But the air still smelled of wet stone and quiet questions. People opened their newspapers with trembling fingers. Front pages across India showed the same image. Sundar Pichai standing in the rain beside Modi Ji, holding the umbrella above both of them. The headline said nothing bold. Just a few words, small and calm, a silent gesture. But inside every heart that read it, something stirred. Yet, even as the story spread, Sundar himself remained missing. No one at the hotel saw him leave. The staff said he went to bed early, asked for no room service, made no calls. His phone was found on the nightstand, untouched since the event. The security cameras showed him walking out at 3:17 a.m., dressed in a plain shirt and jeans, carrying nothing but a folded paper in his hand. There was no suitcase, no assistant, no driver waiting. He simply walked into the darkness, into a city. Still sleeping. But far from the luxury of the capital. In a dusty town outside Varanasi, a young boy named Ankit sat cross-legged on the floor of his grandmother's home. The power had gone out during the storm, and the only light came from a candle flickering beside a tin cup of tea. Ankit was holding the paper Sundar had given him, fingers curled tightly around the edges, as if it might blow away, even indoors. He hadn't told his grandmother yet. He hadn't told anyone. Because the moment Sundar had placed the folded letter in his hand, everything else had disappeared. The noise, the rain, the shouting crowds, it all faded. And Kit had only heard one sentence. You Remind me of someone I lost long ago. Those words had burned into him, not from their sadness, but from the way Sundar had said them, quietly. But with a weight that didn't belong to someone as powerful as the CEO of one of the world's biggest companies. Sundar had knelt down, looked the boy in the eyes, and whispered like he was confessing something that had stayed hidden for years. Ankit had only gone to the summit because his school principal begged the organizers to let 3 top students attend. He was the youngest in the group, barely 13, but he had won the regional coding championship the week before. And someone from the tech board noticed his project on machine learning. It was just a basic model, but it caught attention. That's how he ended up in the front row, Dot, and that's how he met Sundar. But Sundar didn't ask about his project. He didn't talk about computers or success. Instead, he asked Kenji if he liked drawing. That seemed odd, until Sundar smiled and said his mother had once kept all his drawings in a metal box under the bed. Ankit never mentioned his sketches to anyone. He didn't even upload them online, but Sundar knew. Somehow, he just knew Dot when Ankit finally unfolded the letter. The handwriting was neat, but the words shook him more than the storm ever could. Dear Ankit, you're reading this? It means I had to go. Not because I wanted to, but because some journeys are taken alone. I saw something in your eyes that reminded me of who I used to be before the world told me to become someone else. Hold on to that version of yourself. Protect it. Because the world will try to take it from you. I never told anyone this story. But maybe you should know, because you're part of it now. I had a brother. His name was Vined. Ankit read that last line over and over. Then he turned the page. We were inseparable when we were young. I was the quiet one, always fixing broken radios and dreaming about wires that could talk to each other. He was the loud one, the one who laughed too much, ran too fast, and believed I could change the world. But one day, he disappeared. We were walking home from school, and I stopped to tie my shoelace. When I looked up, he was gone. Just like that. Some said he ran away. Others thought it was worse. I spent years pretending to forget, but I never did. I think that's why I started building things. To fill the hole he left behind. And when I saw you yesterday, Ankit, I saw Vinod's eyes in yours. The candle flickered again, and Ankit closed the letter slowly, his mind racing. He didn't know what to do. Should he call someone? Should he keep it to himself? His hands trembled, and for the first time since the summit, he felt truly alone. But outside, down the narrow alley of the town, a figure had arrived. Someone tall, soaked in silence, asking for the boy with the letter. He wore no badge, no official symbol. But he carried a photograph from long ago, a photograph of 2 boys. One of them was clearly young Sundar. The other boy in the photo? Ankit had seen him before Dot in his dreams. Asterisk, the stranger with the photograph Ankit heard the knock before he saw the man. It was soft, almost hesitant, like whoever stood outside wasn't sure if they should be there. The boy looked up from the letter, heart still pounding. The candle had melted halfway, its flame thinning, its wax puddling into the tin plate below. The house was silent, except for the rhythmic sound of water dripping from the leaky roof into a steel bucket. His grandmother stirred in the other room, but did not wake Dot another knock. This time louder. Nkit stood slowly, the letter still clutched in his hand. He walked to the door with bare feet, the cold floor sending a shiver up his legs. He opened it carefully. A man stood in the dark, tall and lean, dressed in worn clothes. That didn't belong to any official. He had a tired face, the kind that carried too many stories in its lines. His hair was long around the ears, his beard unshaved, but his eyes were alert, watchful. In his hand, protected by a plastic sleeve, was a photograph. Are you Ankit? The man asked, voice calm, but distant. Ankit hesitated. Yes. The man didn't speak right away. Instead, he stepped forward slightly, then stopped himself. As if crossing the doorway without permission would be disrespectful. He held up the photograph. The sleeve was fogged slightly from the humidity, but the image inside was clear. 2 boys. They looked no older than 10. Asterisk. One of them had a narrow face and careful eyes. Ankit recognized that boy immediately. It was Sundar. Younger, but unmistakably. He wore a school uniform that looked hand-stitched, and he held a broken Walkman in his lap, smiling like he had just fixed it. The other boy beside him was louder in presence. He grinned widely, arms around Sundar like a protective older brother. His hair was messy, his knees scraped, and his eyes were wild with joy. This photo was taken in 1987, the man said. In Chennai. Ankit stared. Is that Vined? Man didn't answer the question. He looked past Ankit into the flickering light inside the house. May I come in? Ankit nodded, stepping aside. The stranger entered and sat cross-legged on the mat, laying the photo on the table with care. Ankit brought the candle closer and sat across from him, nervous, unsure. Asterisk. How do you know Sundar? Ankit finally. Asked. The man sighed deeply. That's a long story. But first, tell me something. Did he give you a letter? Ankit hesitated, then slowly unfolded the page from his lap and slid it forward. The man didn't touch it. He just stared at it as if it were something sacred. I thought he would do that, the man said. He always kept his heart locked away, but when it opens, even a little, it's powerful. Ankit leaned in, whispering, Who are you? The man looked up, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes, pain, recognition, maybe even guilt. My name is Raghav. I was Binod's best friend. I was there the day he disappeared. Ankit's breath caught. He didn't speak. He just listened. We were walking home from school, Raghav continued. It was late. We were racing, like we always did. Sundar had tied his shoelaces too tight, and Vinod told me to keep running while he waited. I ran ahead. Just a few steps, and when I turned around, he was gone. His voice cracked slightly. He paused. I thought he was playing. He loved to scare us. He used to hide in trees, under stairs, in the smallest places. So I laughed. I waited. I shouted his name. But he didn't come out. Raghav looked down at his hands. They were trembling. We searched for days, weeks. The police gave up. Some said he ran away. Others said worse things. Sundar ... He stopped speaking for nearly a month. He just sat in his room, fixing broken things. He never said Binod's name again. Ankit felt a lump rise in his throat. Do you think he's still alive? Raghav's answer was not simple. He looked at the letter, then back at Ankit. I don't know. But Sundar has been searching for years. In his own way, quietly. He built a life out of silence, but that silence came from loss. I think when he met you, something woke up in him. Ankit looked at the photo again. Binod's face stared back at him, joyful, fearless. He said I reminded him of Vinod. You do, Raghav whispered. Not just in your eyes, but in your questions. They sat in silence for a long while. Then Ankit asked the question he had been holding back since the day before. Where is Sundar now? Raghav didn't look surprised. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, folded piece of cloth. When he unwrapped it, there was an old key inside. He's gone to find something, Raghav said. Or someone. The key ... It opens the door to a house Sundar hasn't entered since Vinod vanished. A house? Ankit asked. Their childhood home. Ankit's heart thudded. Is it still there? Yes. Abandoned. Untouched. Forgotten by most. Ankit stared at the key. It looked ordinary. Rusted. Small. But in that moment, it felt like the heaviest object in the room. He went alone, Raghav said. He didn't want anyone to follow, but he left signs. He left this photo with me. He gave you that letter. He's not running. He single quotes S ... calling. Calling for what? Ankit whispered. For closure, Raghav replied. Or maybe forgiveness. And then he stood, walked to the door, and handed Ankit the key. You have to go, Raghav said gently. He doesn't know it yet, but he needs you. Ankit looked at the candle, now almost gone. its flame small but steady outside. The wind had returned. A journey was beginning, and at the heart of it was not just a missing boy from the past, but the man the world thought they knew, and the boy who might just be the only one who could bring him back. Asterisk, the house that never healed, train to Chennai, moved slowly, as if reluctant to carry the weight of the past. Ankit sat by the window, the key hanging from a string around his neck, tucked under his shirt. The photograph rested between the pages of Sundar's letter, which he now kept in a notebook beside him. The platform had been crowded when he left, but as the train moved farther from Varanasi, the world outside became quieter, less buildings, more fields, fewer people. He didn't know why he felt nervous. Maybe it was because he had never left home alone before. Maybe it was because he wasn't chasing a place, but a person who had once been a boy like him, full of questions, full of wonder. And somewhere along the way, that boy had vanished too. Not physically, but emotionally. Sundar Pichai was a name the world knew. A man whose voice opened conferences, whose decisions shaped the digital age. But behind that image was a man who had once stood silently in the rain for someone else. A man who vanished the same night. His story became famous again. Ankit didn't care about the fame. He cared about the silence. The train finally pulled into the old Chennai station just after sunset. The air was thick with humidity, and the sky had turned the color of dying embers. Raga had drawn a map for him by hand, showing the way to a neighborhood that no longer existed on most city maps. Sundar's childhood home sat in a forgotten corner, where the houses leaned sideways and the power lines dipped low like tired limbs. It took Ankit almost an hour to find it. The house was small, one floor. The outer walls were cracked, the paint peeling like old skin. Wild plants had taken over the yard, their roots reaching up the sides of the house like fingers. The gate was missing. The door, however, was intact. Ankit stood before it, breathing carefully. Then he pulled the key from his shirt and slowly pushed it into the lock. It turned with a sound that felt heavier than metal. Inside, the air was dry, dusty, still. The smell of time long gone lingered in every corner. Wood, rust, earth, and something else. A scent that felt like memories. He stepped inside quietly, like an intruder in a place sacred and lost. There were no photos on the wall. No furniture, except the rusted metal chair and a small wooden table that had collapsed on one side. But there was a shelf on the far wall, and on it, 3 objects that hadn't been touched in years. A broken Walkman. A sketchbook with one torn corner, and a small toy airplane made of plastic. Its wings faded by the sun. Ankit walked toward them, hands trembling. He picked up the sketchbook first and opened it gently. Inside were drawings, simple ones, but full of feeling. A house on a hill. 2 boys under a tree. Wire connecting 2 tin cans. The last page made him pause. It was a drawing of a room with no people in it, but the shadows on the floor showed 2 figures. As if someone had been there. Ankit turned around slowly. And that's when he saw the door. It was in the hallway, barely visible behind a leaning shelf. He pushed the shelf aside and stepped closer. The wood was old, warped by time, but the doorknob was new. Someone had been here recently. He turned it. Inside was a small room. Maybe it had once been a study or a bedroom. Now it was empty, except for a rolled up carpet in the corner and a faint trail of dried mud on the floor boot prints leading to the window. Nkit followed them. The window was open. Outside, behind the house. He saw it for the first time. A tree. Massive, ancient, its trunk thick and knotted, its roots crawling into the soil like 100 secrets. And under that tree was Sundar. He was sitting on the ground, knees pulled to his chest, head bowed. And I didn't move. He just watched. The man who had stood beside the Prime Minister in silence, who had disappeared the night of his most public gesture, was now curled beneath a childhood tree, as if trying to fit back into a version of himself that no longer existed. Ankit walked quietly down the steps, across the broken backyard, and stood a few feet away. "You found me," Sundar said without looking up. NK, I didn't answer. Sundar lifted his head slowly. And for the first time, the boy saw something in his eyes that no camera had ever captured. Not brilliance, not power, but grief. Raw. Unspoken grief. I thought I could leave the past behind, Sundar said softly. But the past doesn't stay buried. It waits. Ankit knelt beside him, unsure what to say. This tree, Sundar continued, touching the root beside him, is where we used to play. Vinod and I, we would bury secret messages here. Sometimes just silly notes, sometimes plans, and once a promise. What kind of promise? Ankit asked, barely whispering. Sundar looked at him. That we'd never leave each other behind. A long silence followed. Then Sundar reached into the dirt beside the root and pulled out a small tin box. It was old, rusted, but sealed tight. He opened it carefully. Inside was a piece of paper folded and yellowed with age. He handed it to Ankit. The boy unfolded it. The handwriting was messy. Clearly a child's. It said, "If you ever get lost, come back to the tree. I will wait." It was signed. Vinod hands trembled. Sundar looked away. I came back to wait, he said, just in case. Ankit wanted to speak, but no words came. The sun was setting behind them, and the shadows stretched long. Across the yard, the house stood still, holding its breath. Then, from somewhere near the front gate, there was a sound. A voice. Weak, hoarse, calling one word. A name. Sundar? The man froze. Ankit turned sharply. The voice called again. Sundar, is that you? It couldn't be, not after all these years, but Sundar was already on his feet, running through the overgrown backyard, past the broken steps, through the silent house. Heart racing faster than it had in decades. Ankit followed. And at the gate stood a man. Thin. Sunken eyes. Scars on his cheek. But the same grin, the same wild, fearless eyes. Sundar stopped. Bino whispered, "You remembered the promise." And then darkness fell. Asterisk, the weight of what was never said silence after minutes. Words was unlike any silence Sundar had ever known. It wasn't empty. It was full, bursting at the seams, with unsaid things, uncried tears, and 1,000 days that had passed between them like ghosts in a dark corridor. The wind moved slowly through the branches above the gate. The tree in the backyard swayed, gently, as if it too were watching. Somewhere, a dog barked in the distance, but even that sound seemed far away. Sundar didn't speak. He couldn't. His breath was caught somewhere deep in his chest. His hands still curled into fists from the run. Asterisk. Vinod stood just inside the broken gate, dressed in clothes that didn't belong to the world Sundar now lived in. A worn shirt torn at the shoulder. Pants too large, tied with a rope at the waist. His face was older, hardened, but the boy inside him, the brother who had once raced Sundar down school lanes, was still there, peeking through in the way he tilted his head. In the faint crack of a grin that didn't know if it had permission to exist. I didn't think you'd still remember the tree, Vinod said softly, stepping closer. Sundar's voice finally broke free. I never forgot. Vinod looked down at his hands. They were scarred. One finger crooked from an old break. I waited a long time. Where were you? Sundar whispered. Vinod sat down on the edge of the stone platform by the gate, his legs shaking as if they had walked too far for too long. He looked at the dirt. I didn't run away, he said. Not at first. Someone took me. Ankit, who had stayed just behind Sundar, sat slowly on the steps, listening without breathing. I was walking behind you and Raghav, Vinod said. We had just passed the temple. I stopped because someone called my name, a man I didn't know. He said Appa was hurt, that I needed to come. I thought it was real. I followed him. I was 11. I didn't know better. Sundar's face twisted, pain blooming across it like a wound reopened. They took me to a van, Vinod continued. Drove for hours. I don't remember where we stopped first. It was somewhere cold. There were other boys. Scared. Some cried. All night. They told us we'd be trained for work. But there was no school, no books, just orders, labor. He stopped talking. The air hung heavy again. How long? Sundar asked, his voice cracking. Vinod didn't answer at first. When he did, it was quiet. Years. Until I was old enough to fight back, until I found a way to run. Why didn't you come home? Vinod looked up at him. I didn't know where to go. They moved us so many times. Different cities. Different names. I forgot how to speak Tamil properly. Forgot the house. The street. I didn't know if you were still alive. Or if you even remembered me. Sundar knelt down in front of him, reached out slowly. I remembered every day. Vinod looked at his brother's hand, but didn't take it. Instead, he said something Sundar didn't expect. You found a new world, became someone. I saw your face on a screen one day, in a cafe. Someone said your name, said you made phones smarter than people. I thought, you don't need a broken brother. Those words hurt more than any confession. Sundar shook his head. Don't say that. But it's true, Vinod replied. I had nothing. I was no one. And you were everything. Ankit finally spoke. He never let go of you. Vinod looked at the boy, confused. Ankit stood and stepped forward. I met him yesterday. He gave me a letter. Told me about you. Told me you were gone but not forgotten. And then he came here, alone, to find you. Vinod blinked. Why would he tell you? Because he saw you in me, Ankit said. Vinod stared, and for a moment his guard dropped. The edges of his face softened. You're just a kid. Ankit smiled slightly. So were you once. Sundar stood up. We don't have to talk about everything now. We have time. Vinod looked down again. Do we? Yes, Sundar said. We do, and this time I'm not going to let you walk away. They stood there for a long time, the three of them, between what was and what could still be, and then Vinod asked the question that had been living in his silence for years. Did Appa ever forgive me? Sundar's face fell. He thought he failed you. He searched for you until the day he died. Vinod nodded slowly, tears welling in his eyes, but refusing to fall. Amma. She waited. Every evening, she made a plate for you, said your name out loud every night before she slept. Vinod covered his face with his hands. She passed quietly, Sundar said. But she was smiling. Vinod's shoulders shook. No one moved to stop the tears. No one tried to fill the silence. Because some grief is sacred. Some grief deserves its space. They walked into the house together that night. And though it was empty, it no longer felt abandoned. Vinod took a blanket from the shelf and lay on the old floor under the open window. Sundar sat beside him, watching the stars through a crack in the roof, remembering the nights they used to name constellations together. Ankit curled up nearby, the photograph and key now tucked safely in his bag. No one spoke of the future. They just sat in the presence of what had been found. Outside. The wind whispered through the tree again. But far away, in the city, someone else had seen the photo that went viral of Sundar holding the umbrella beside the Prime Minister. Someone who recognized Sundar, someone who recognized Vinod, and they were already on their way. Not to welcome, but to silence. Because the past wasn't done yet, not even close. Asterisk the man from the shadows this morning came slowly over Chennai, the sky bruised. With pale gray light, the birds began to call softly, as if unsure whether they should wake the world just yet. Inside the house, everything remained still. 3 people slept without speaking, each in a different corner, each wrapped in a silence. They had earned. Ankit woke first. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes, his body sore from the cold floor. Sundar was still beside the window, head leaned against the wall, breathing steady. Vinod had curled into a tighter shape in the corner. One hand clutched around the toy airplane from the shelf. Ankit stood, stepped outside. The ground was wet. Again, dew coating the grass and the roots of the old tree. Everything smelled of earth and memory. He stretched blinked against the morning light, and then he saw the figure. A man stood near the rusted gate, wearing a black cap and holding a phone to his ear. He wasn't from the neighborhood. He wasn't lost. Ankit stepped back behind. the wall, heart beating faster. The man's posture was too alert. His shoes too polished. He had a scar down one side of his jaw and spoke into the phone with short, sharp words. Ankit strained to hear. Double quotes. Yes. Confirmed. He's here. The photo was real. The kid was right. He came back. A pause. No one else knows yet. Another. Pause. Then the words that sent ice through Ankit's spine. Don't worry. I'll handle it. Quietly. Ankit ran back into the house. Wake up, he whispered urgently, shaking Sundar's arm. Someone's here. Sundar's eyes opened immediately. Who? I don't know, but he's not here by accident. Vinod stirred slowly. When he saw the fear on Ankit's face, he sat up sharply. What's happening? There's a man outside, Ankit said. He saw the photo. He's been watching. Vinod's face went pale. Is it someone you know? Sundar asked. I know nodded slowly. Not by name, but yes. The man worked for the ones who kept us. He wasn't? One of them, not at first, but later. He helped. He ran things, punished the boys who tried to escape. Sundar stood, his voice calm but cold. He saw the umbrella photo, recognized me. Realized you might be with me. Yes, Vinod said. And he knows that if I speak, their whole system could collapse. Names, locations, patterns, they're all in my head. Ankit whispered. So he came to stop you. Sundar looked at his brother. We're not running. Vinod shook his head. I don't want to. But if he's here, others might be too. They don't need many. Just one with a camera. One with a lie. They'll make it look like I attacked you. Or that I never existed. Ankit looked at the two men. What do we do? Sundar picked up his phone silent all this time and turned it on. Signal bars rose. Messages flooded in. The world had noticed his absence. He opened the camera and pointed it at Vinod. Talk. He said. I knowed. Now? Before they tell your story for you. The video began recording. Sundar held the phone steady. The background was plain, a broken home, a cracked wall, but Vinod's voice was strong. Asterisk. My name is Vinod Pichai. I was taken from Chennai when I was 11 years old. The people who took me said they were offering jobs, training, but it was a lie. We were made to work without pay, moved from place to place. Some boys disappeared. No one came to help. No one asked. His voice trembled, but he did not stop. For years I lived like a shadow until I found a way out. And now I am no longer afraid. Sundar ended the video. I teared. What happens now? Sundar smiled, though there was sadness in it. Now the world watches. They stepped outside. The man at the gate straightened. He saw Sundar first. Then I know. His face changed. He shouldn't be here. The man said. No, stepped forward. Neither should you. You don't know what you're doing. The man warned. You'll ruin everything. Sundar replied. Some things deserve to be ruined. He lifted the phone. Hit upload. The video went live. Within minutes. It would reach millions. The man at the gate didn't move. Asterisk. He didn't threaten. He just stared at Sundar. At the man who had changed the world with machines and was now changing it again with a single story. And then, without another word, the man turned and walked away. Gone. No chase. No fight. Because the truth had already left his grasp. Later that day. The calls came from journalists. From officials. From people who had once been boys like Vinod, watching silently from faraway cities, realizing they were no longer alone. But Sundar didn't speak to them. Not yet. Asterisk. He sat under the tree. Again, this time beside his brother. Ankit watched from the steps. The key still warm around his neck. And for the first time in a very long time, Sundar Pichai didn't feel like a symbol or a headline or a leader. He just felt like a man who had come home. Not to remember the past, but to rebuild something inside. It. Something quiet. Something whole. And somewhere far away from microphones and stages, from umbrellas and photos. A boy like Ankit watched the video and whispered, Maybe one day I'll tell the truth, Joe. Asterisk.